Take your mind into the wonderful world of physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual wellness. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Kinetic Hour. Conversations with you and guests. With your host, Kenan, Wesley, Mason. That's me.
Last night I watched a movie called Civil War. A movie called Civil War. It was released in the late spring. And I saw it last night. Actually, it was a pretty good movie. It was really intense. That's good. Pomegranate. That's pomegranate wine. It's my favorite. But the movie Civil War was a really intense film, and it just goes to show you what can happen here in America when we allow certain, or when we vote, not allow, when we supposedly vote certain individuals into office. You know, Donald said he was going to be a dictator on day one. However you want to filter or interpret that is up to you. But just the fact that he's saying the word dictator when it comes to America, that should startle people. That should startle some people. But the movie Civil War was pretty much about the citizens versus the United States military, because of how the military has been influenced to treat the citizens by way of orders from the president. And if you think January 6th was crazy enough, this movie, you know, even though it's movies, I know it's film. I get it. It's fantasy. But a lot of these fantasies are based on truths of reality. And a movie like Civil War could happen. It could. It's a possibility based on us and how we emotionalize politics and who we allow to run and control the country. You know, Donald, it was also called out that Donald was inherited a few $100 million to start his journey into real estate, being a real estate mogul. But it's also a fact that he's had 6 or 7 bankruptcies for these conglomerate businesses. Many of them are no longer in operation, including a casino that he had right here in California, out in the Palm Springs area, in the Native American reservations. When he didn't do business the way they wanted to do business, you know, they took his name off. You know, they forfeited their business venture because the Donald, for whatever reason, maybe it was because even they saw how the Donald truly is personally when he's not on camera. Maybe he's even worse off camera than he is on camera. 6 bankruptcies. She also mentioned that 200 Republicans are endorsing Kamala Harris. People that were John McCain supporters, people that were in Mitt Romney's camp, people that were in George Bush Jr.'s camp, they're voting for Kamala Harris. And just to show you, just to kind of go over and just kind of put a stamp of approval on this right here, 200 Republicans, or over 200 Republicans, and many of them have made it clear that they cannot vote for the Donald for varying reasons. And to remind people of those reasons, I'm going to put up some clips. As I told you, I'm going to put up a few clips that are, each of them are about a couple of minutes long. But it just to show people that because of the Donald and his presence and his words, his talking points, that people in positions of power in other fields and other industries, they don't want to be a part of this anymore. So I'm going to pull up the first clip I'm going to pull up, because, you know, the Donald loves to talk about the border. He loves talking about the border and how there are millions and millions, right? Millions and millions of people that are coming across the southern border from either Mexico or Central America, and they're coming over, they're breaking out of the mental asylums and the mental institutions, and they're breaking out of jail, and they're crossing the border to come and terrorize you and me. That's the narrative about brown people that are crossing over into this land that literally belongs to them anyway. But the narrative is that we're supposed to be afraid of them, right? Brown people. So I'm going to play this clip from Border Patrol officer from Texas. Border Patrol from Texas. So I'm just going to play this clip here and watch this.
On the other side of the border, the traffickers, they pack migrants into 18-wheelers like cattle, 50, 100 at a time. Then they seal the doors. That's when the 911 calls come. We hear them, desperate, terrified, gasping for air. Now, sometimes we get there in time. Sometimes, despite our best efforts, we can't. When Donald Trump comes down to Texas, stands next to officers in uniforms just like mine, he's not there to help us. Don't think that, not for a second. He is a self-serving man. I mean, look, just like when he killed the border bill, he just made our jobs harder. Now, Kamala, on the other hand, has been fighting border crime for years. She's gone down to Mexico and worked to stop the traffickers. And when the traffickers didn't stop, she put them in jail. Now, down in my neck of the woods, we call that fooling around and finding out. I may be paraphrasing a bit. We protect them. Now, the border sheriffs that I know, right, and we're like Kamala. We protect and serve. We enforce the law. We show compassion. And we fight like hell to protect our border. Because as we've always known in Texas, cuando luchamos, ganamos. When we fight, we win.
All right. And that was Border Patrol officer from Bexar County, Texas, Javier Salazar, who spoke at the DNC, at the Democratic National Convention. And that's just one of That's just one of the three people that I'm going to highlight here. The next person I'm going to bring up is former House representative from Illinois. Former House representative from Illinois. His name is Adam Kinzinger. Adam Kinzinger. And I'm only going to play a couple of minutes of him because he was up there for about 7 minutes. So I'm only going to play
good evening.
Minutes here.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm Adam Kinzinger, and I am proud to be in the trenches with you as part of this sometimes awkward alliance that we have to defend truth, defend democracy, and decency. I was just a kid when I was drawn to the party of Ronald Reagan, to his vision of a strong America, the shining city on a hill. I was a Republican for 12 years in Congress, and I still hold on to the label. I never thought I'd be here, but listen, you never thought you'd see me here, did you? But I've learned something about the Democratic Party, and I want to let my fellow Republicans in on the secret. The Democrats are as patriotic as us. They love this country just as much as we do. And they are as eager to defend American values at home and abroad as we conservatives have ever been. I was relieved to discover that because I've learned something about my party too, something I couldn't ignore. The Republican Party is no longer conservative. It has switched its allegiance from the principles that gave it purpose to a man whose only purpose is himself. Donald Trump is a weak man pretending to be strong. He is a small man pretending to be big. He's a faithless man pretending to be righteous. He's a perpetrator who can't stop playing the victim. He puts on, listen, he puts on quite a show, but there is no real strength there. As a conservative and a veteran, I believe true strength lies in defending the vulnerable. It's in protecting your family. It's in standing up for our Constitution and our democracy. That is the soul of being a conservative. It used to be the soul of being a Republican, but Donald Trump has suffocated the soul of the Republican Party.
All right, I'm going to stop it right there. Donald has suffocated, right? Suffocated the life of the Republican Party. Oh. And the third, or the next video that I'm going to show here is from Donald's former press secretary. Donald's former press secretary, Stephanie Gershom. Stephanie Gershom. Remember, Donald had 4 press secretaries? He had 4 press secretaries, and ended with the last one, who we saw, Kayleigh McEnany, who, because she was Trump's right-hand woman as press secretary, she has a comfortable job now over at Fox. on this show, morning show called Outnumbered. But here I'm going to play a clip of former press secretary Stephanie Gershom. And let's see what she has to say about the Donald.
Please welcome Stephanie Grisham.
I wasn't just a Trump supporter. I was a true believer. I was one of his closest advisors. The Trump family became my family. I spent Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's all at Mar-a-Lago. I saw him when the cameras were off. Behind closed doors, Trump mocks his supporters. He calls them basement dwellers. On a hospital visit one time when people were dying in the ICU, he was mad that the cameras were not watching him. He has no empathy, no morals, and no fidelity to the truth. He used to tell me, "It doesn't matter what you say, Stephanie. Say it enough and people will believe you." But it does matter. What you says matter, and what you don't say matters. On January 6th, I asked Melania if we could at least tweet that while peaceful protest is the right of every American, there's no place for lawlessness or violence. She replied with one word: no. I became the first senior staffer to resign that day. I couldn't be part of the insanity any longer. When I was press secretary, I got skewered for never holding a White House briefing. It's because, unlike my boss, I never wanted to stand at that podium and lie. Now here I am, behind a podium, advocating for a Democrat. And that's because I love my country more than my party. Kamala Harris tells the truth. She respects the American people, and she has my vote. Thank you.
All right. That was Stephanie Grisham, former press secretary of the Donald. And that's just an example of some of this out of there. There we go. All right, we're good now. So you just saw Stephanie Grisham tell us that if you tell the story enough times, people will start to believe it, which is true. Learning about the brain as I have, and learning how it operates through repetition, her statement holds true. If you tell anyone anything in a repetitious manner, or what we called, oh gosh, it slips me right now. But anytime you repeat anything to someone, or a bit of information, or repeat it over and over and over again, spaced repetition. There it is, spaced repetition. Whether it's a fact or whether it's not a fact, lies will become truth to the beholder, right? If it's told to them enough, the lie will become their truth. That's just what it is. And if Donald told her that, then yeah, we know what his philosophy is on how to get to the people by any means necessary. So yes, when you tell people lies over and over and over again, they will believe it as truth. They just will. Where's Melania in all of this? Where's Melania? You know, before the RNC, she was promoting her book. She has a book. It's self-titled. It's called Melania. That's it, Melania. But where is she as far as his campaign is concerned for her husband? Why isn't she campaigning for her husband? Why isn't she out supporting him? You know, after the debate was over, the first person that was came to that stage to greet Kamala Harris was her husband. Her husband was right there to greet her, to praise her for her performance. Whether you like her or not is irrelevant. Her husband was there. Contrasting, when the Donald left and went back, you can see him go to the back. Nobody was there to embrace him and tell him congratulations, you did a great job, or whatever the case. No, nobody was there. He just walked to the back, and you could see him walk all the way to the back, just as lonely and walking as if he were defeated. And his body language told the story. Every time she called him on anything, he took the bait. He took the bait. And the only thing he could say as a comeback, that Biden hates Harris, right? That's what he said, that Joe Biden hates Kamala Harris. Behind closed doors, he truly hates Kamala Harris. And then the big one that everyone's talking about, how he's said that people that look like me are eating animals. Remember what he said, that black people in Springfield, they're eating the dogs, right? That's what he said. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. That's what he said. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. I even saw one, somebody, it was a lady on TikTok. I think it was on TikTok or Instagram. I don't know. But she claimed that she saw a couple of people walking with dead ducks in their hands. So now the claim is that black people are walking up and down the street eating dogs and cats and going arbitrarily, just going into the neighbors' yards and taking their dogs and cats and putting them in pots and chopping up the carrots and the potatoes and the celery so they can make dog and cat soup. That's the claim right now. And they're still talking about this. Trump's vice presidential pick, J.D. Vance, is saying the same thing. But there have been no reports still, no videos, no reports, no official reports, no officialities, none of that, that would back up this this allegation that black people are eating pets. They're eating pets. That's what's coming out of the Donald's mouth and his running mate, J.D. Vance. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the dogs, right? They're eating the cats. You know, when Donald starts doing this, you know he's lying to you. He's just making up stuff. As soon as he starts doing this. What else do we have here? Women's rights. Women's rights, which is a big one. Women's rights. You know, they just overturned Roe versus Wade, the Supreme Court, spearheaded by the head honcho of the Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas, Mr. Conservative. He's the head honcho now because he's been in that seat the longest. But they overturned Roe versus Wade, and now women's rights are up for question. Women's rights. And And remember, women's rights are being held in the hands of another tyrant, right? Women, you want your rights to be in the hands of another man, president again? And it's not just about birth control. I mean, this is about just women's rights, whatever they are, not just medical. It's about just women's rights, period. Remember, these same Caucasian men didn't even want their mothers to vote. They didn't want their mamas to vote. They didn't want their sisters to vote. They didn't want their aunts to vote. They didn't want their daughters to vote. No, they didn't want you to vote as a woman, right? You didn't count. You weren't a part of the human equation. Your only job was to birth children and be in the home. That's it. Nothing else. Having no dreams, no ambitions to do anything more, unless that is your dream and ambition to be a mother and stay at home and take care of the children, which is great. But outside of that, we're talking about voting rights, or women's rights. I'm sorry, women's rights. Just the rights of women, period, whatever they might be, including medical care. Because at the end of the day, it's not my business what the woman across the street does with her body. Not my business. It's not going to affect me. It's not going to affect me. So why am I getting my emotions all riled up over someone and their decisions that may live in another state or another city? Let women have their rights to do what they see or what they believe is right for them. Right? That's what America is. It's supposed to be the freedom country. You can't be the freedom country when you're taking away the rights of a woman. And again, it's not just about birth control, right? You see all the conservatives, how they show these big posters of dead fetuses and all that to try to get into your emotions. I get it. I've seen all that, which is horrible. I'm not going to deny it. But at the same time, that's their decision, not yours. That's their decision. And they have to live with the consequences, not you. Not you. You have your own consequences to deal with, not the person across the street. Women's rights are on the line. So, ladies, and for all the female Trump supporters, remember, this is the same man that said, just grab him in the pussy, right? The same man that's pretty much cheated on all of his wives, whether it was Ivana Trump, Marla Maples, his second wife, his third wife, Melania, which obviously he's committed adultery with at least two women that we know of, Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels. We know this. There's no denying it. The E. Jean Carroll incident from, I don't know, 20 years ago, which he was found liable for sexual assault. So for the ladies, the women supporters that support Donald Trump, don't allow your emotions to get the better of you, because you do have rights. And it is your right to exercise your right as a woman without any type of hindrance from government. It's not government's job to tell you how to be a woman, or to try to teach you or coerce or convince or influence you how to be a woman. So women's rights, again, these are the things that are on the line when it comes to this cycle of election. Women's rights. Kamala Harris was fact-checked at least once for claiming that the Donald left us in worse shape since the since, what does she say, the Civil War or something like that, some way out. Actually, the economy was getting a little better as Donald was leaving, because the pandemic was slowing down. People were getting back to work. Certain guidelines were being lifted. So the economy wasn't left in total shambles, as Kamala tried to describe. But nonetheless, we still have some hills to climb when it comes to policy. And this last one here is, and I'll end with this, his healthcare stance. And then I want to talk about this new, since I brought up Melania Trump not being present with the Donald, there's this new lady popping up. And if you notice, the women that are around Donald, they all look alike.